Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to 86.7 FM. You're with Polar. It's time to get icy with some smooth jazz. Hey, Dylan's ready. Okay, guys? And... Hey, what's up, Dylan?
I can talk about politics or whatever while I'm playing it. So it's totally fine. Oh, hey, Polar.
Hey, what's up? Dylan, are you gonna go camera for this or no camera?
I can turn on camera. If
Yeah,
you
do
need
that.
But hey, did you hear about my new lovely sponsor that I was just talking about?
Oh, no, I saw that you're gaming tomorrow, though. I'm kind of hyped for
Yeah,
that.
I'm gaming. A gaming company
Mm-hmm.
who's gonna release a game in December has decided to give me an early copy.
No.
You know what the game is?
No,
You know what the game
you got the Cyberpunk sponsor?
That's right. It's Raid Shadow Legends, which you can go to my. Yeah, no, really, it is Raid Shadow Legends.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I love fucking with people with that. It's great.
You got me though, to be honest.
It's great.
Yeah, no, congrats on partner, man. You've been working real hard. Okay.
Thank you. Now I can watch as all my views plummet as nobody wants to support me anymore. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
True. Working on the partner push right now. Trying my best. But hey, that may or may not happen. But thank you for coming on. Okay, there's only one man on Twitch who could handle the topic that we're talking about today. Okay, and that man is
Mike from PA.
Yeah, Mike from PA. Yeah, we were just talking about all that cringe class reductionism stuff. So that pretty bad. But okay, guys, the real topic that we're gonna be talking about is how will a Biden administration approach foreign policy. And the way that I'd like to start off this conversation is I think, Dylan, you also saw this, but Biden has now talked about putting in his future Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. Okay?
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I will say, by the way, let me just read chat. I think, why am I even answering this? Somebody in chat brought up a great point, and this is all I need to read. So, I'll tell you what Biden's foreign policy will look like his damn record, war, corruption, and a lot of bad choices. From all the Iraqis in the world, we are sending a big fuck you to all the Americans who voted for this war criminal. Wow, war criminal, that's crazy. Well, boy, I know you wouldn't just say that. So, what is his war crime? Anyway, back to what we were talking about. I'll wait in chat for what his war crime specifically was. Because nobody in chat would just say a word without knowing what that means. I respect chat, right? I'm trying to go on a new angle of respecting chat instead of calling them a bunch of dunderheads. But, let's go to Anthony Blinken. So what's really interesting to me about the Anthony Blinken pick is actually that it was like his first major pick. And it was announced super early on. And it was like, this is like kind of a little unprecedented. And it's the first one. And so what does that tell you? That his first pick for the world to hear is Anthony Blinken for Secretary of State. It says basically to the world, yo, foreign policy is a priority for Biden. Foreign policy is going to be a big thing for Biden. Foreign policy. Listen, look, first thing we're saying to the world is, don't worry, America's got your back. And to me, that sends a good message that just the fact of the speed of the Blinken pick, in that message is foreign policy will be prioritized by a Biden administration. Which, after having 4 years of someone like just shoot the shit and just try whatever random thing they could think of or what their emotions had in the moment, that's a big thing for me. Now, when it comes to Blinken himself, I obviously have some deep disagreements with Blinken when it comes to the Iraq war. There's a quote that's going around on Twitter a lot of his problem with the Iraq war is that it was executed incorrectly. Personally, I would have been against the Iraq war, period. But if you were in favor of the Iraq war, it is a war that was most certainly executed incorrectly when you talk about de-Ba'athification. Another thing that would be somewhere I would disagree with him fundamentally on is the Iraq war. I don't think it should have happened. He thinks it should have happened. Here's a thing that I do think of is of interest and something that I agree with Blinken on is his recent discussions about Syria, specifically about how disastrous he believes we failed in Syria, and he admitted that Obama's policy in Syria failed. And I think it is important for people to acknowledge our past failures. And I think for Biden to have a successful foreign policy, the first thing he's going to need to do is look at his record on foreign policy and say, this is where I failed. This is where I succeeded. I succeeded when it came to the Iran deal. I failed when it came to the Iraq war. My opinion behind closed door about Libya was correct. But the administration I was part of failed when it came to Libya. And I think that type of recognition of past failures is going to be important for a Biden foreign policy success story, which I know it's not going to look exactly like how I would want foreign policy to be, but it's still going to be miles better than Joe Biden's. But specifically, while he admitted that Obama's administration failed on Syria, he talked about how Trump's policy on Syria was still like 10 times worse because it put salt in the wound, made the whole situation worse, and gave up all leverage, which is the exact thing I've been talking about on Twitch for the last year. So it is refreshing to know that there's going to be somebody going in there that are going to be able to analyze Trump's mistakes and try to start rebuilding off of that. Besides that, there's some other picks that I think are pretty interesting. That I think so. So obviously, I have some disagreements with the Tony Blinken pick. Even though he wasn't the worst option, and I don't think he was the best option. He's kind of like an option that I expected though, since he has advised Biden. He advised Biden when he was vice president, and he also worked with him when he was chair of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. So these are two people that have deep ties, so it's not a huge surprise. A lot of people expected this. Personally, I would have preferred the person, Mr. Burns, who was actually somebody who was on the list. I have no reason, but there was someone on there who went by the name of Burns that I think probably would have been the best choice. But you'll win some, you lose some. So he also appointed what is her name? One second, I have it somewhere.
Oh,
I forgot.
Yeah.
To the UN. Greenfield, Linda Thomas Greenfield. She was somebody who was helped manage African American affairs from 2013 to 2017 under Obama, and specifically though, she was also ambassador to Liberia. Which shows that she has a history with being ambassador. She has worked in foreign relations in this place and that place all around. I forget the specific positions, but she is somebody who's been a big proponent of buffing up the kind of state apparatus when it comes to our foreign affairs, which is something I actually agree with 100%. When I say buffing up, I mean making time to staff all the positions that need to be staffed, funding all the positions that need to be funded, because we have a huge problem in this country where our apparatus of foreign affairs isn't properly staffed. Specifically, the main thing I'll always point to is the fact that usually 2 to 3 years into a president's term, they won't even have all their ambassadorships like filled. And Trump was even worse. I think at one point it was like 2 years into his term, and half of all ambassadorships weren't even filled. That means there was half the countries in the world didn't even have an American ambassador. And the ones that did have American ambassadors, they had positions that were sold to them. Basically, they donate $100,000 to Trump's campaign, then they get to be ambassador to Montenegro, which is not a way you should be doing this, obviously.
Especially in a place like Montenegro right now, right? Like
anywhere, yeah. Really.
So, you mentioned this, right? You kind of hinted at this, but you talked about for example, rejoining the Iran nuclear deal. I know that was something that made a difference to me when it came to the Obama foreign policy, was getting into that, right? And then working with the France, right, in that aspect. How difficult do you think it's going to be to rejoin it now that Iran is now, I would say, more isolated from the Western world and is now relying more on the East, like places like China? Do you think it's going to be simple to get back in, or do you think it's going to be a struggle?
Wait. 1 second. Bored and hungry. I don't know if you know this. Biden did not bring back the slave trade. That was not something Biden did. He did not bring back the slave trade in Libya. The slave trade existed before Gaddafi, during Gaddafi, and it just got worse after Gaddafi. So you can't say that, number one, even if it did come, it would be due to the fallout of a multi-state Look, there's a lot of things you can pin on Biden when it comes to a bad record with the African American community. You cannot pin slavery on Joe Biden. That is not something you can put on him.
Hey, what are you talking about, Dylan? Slavery? Dude, Biden's old. He probably
he's old. He's old and white.
Yes, he probably did the Atlantic slave trade himself. I mean, what can you do, right? So.
Okay. American-led intervention in Syria. American-led intervention. Okay, so why are these interventions war crimes? Tell me. God, I hate these discussions. Look, there is an argument. Okay, I'm not going to argue with chat right now. I got to just remember that I'm talking to you. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the question?
So the question was talking about how difficult do you think it's going to be for the U.S. to
Oh, extremely difficult. It's going to be so difficult because here's the first problem. we've already showed that all it takes is one administration, boom, agreement dead. Number one.
Mhm.
Number two, the people who now hold political influence in Iran, the so-called progressive leader that they had, quote unquote, has less leverage than ever. And the idea that we'd be able to just waltz back into a similar deal and be able to just start re-engaging is ridiculous. They have number one, they have no reason to believe us, and the conservatives in the country have more leverage than ever. So it doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, then you can talk about the fallout of the Soleimani strike
Yeah.
and how they never really completely retaliated that. Some Americans died, some British troops died, but that was by the PMFs in Iraq. It wasn't really done directly. There was some talk about a South African ambassador being killed. It's going to be extremely difficult, and there might have to be a bringing back to the negotiating table when it comes to the specifics of the agreement. I think ultimately that might have to happen. We might actually have to give up more. It all depends on how much leverage we have and how much we can get them to trust our word and how much the other countries can convince them that this time we'll stick to it. This time we'll stay in the agreement, and this time I won't reverse on it. Because all it could take is another 4 years, then I don't know, Tucker Carlson gets in office and he rips it up. Who knows?
So you kind of mentioned it. You said it again. You said like giving up more. Do you think a Biden administration would be more likely to give up more than they are than we already considered with the Iran nuclear deal, or do you think there's not going to be enough political capital to do that?
There's going to be enough political capital to do what?
So you mentioned like having to give up more, right, in the actual deal,
Yeah.
right, to a certain extent, like because
It's
yeah.
going to be difficult because number one, it's going to have to be done by executive order no matter what. Because we got to look at the situation we're in, where Mitch McConnell is most likely going to control the Senate. And even if we do have 50-50, all it takes is someone like Joe Manchin saying, I don't feel like it. And boom. Now, I think if it was 50-50, most likely we could get it through. But I think this is something that's going to have to be done by executive order. And even if he can override veto and there's not going to be enough votes there for veto, which most likely there wouldn't, there is still the problem of there could be backlash when it comes to the fact that there will be a uproar in the conservative community about the re-entry of the deal. If the conditions are worse, there's going to be an uproar no matter what. So he's got to be prepared for that. But re-entering the deal with even worse conditions, that's going to be a very difficult sell to the domestic audience and specifically to blue dogs and stuff of that sort. It's going to be a very tough sell, and it could be a PR disaster really for him. And we're going to see probably a change of rhetoric that we've seen from Israel, for example. That the Israeli government has been extremely supportive of Donald Trump, and the Israeli government has not been afraid to get involved in American politics before. They have gotten involved in American politics when Benjamin Netanyahu campaigned for Mitt Romney during the 2012 election. That most people don't remember that he went there and shook his hand during the 2012 election. I mean, he lost, so that's egg on the face of Netanyahu, but still, he went and spoke before an American public during the in front of Congress. He has, during meetings with President Obama, basically publicly lambasted him for differences of agreement. So I think we might, it depends on how Biden handles this first few months, but most likely we're going to see a shift towards that if he has to concede more to Iran. Even if he tries to re-enter that, they're going to see a shift towards that somewhat, but it depends on how drastic it will be, depending on how that agreement lays out. If Biden can even acquire this. But I do think by him picking Tony Blinken so quick and appointing the Secretary of State so quick, it does show to me that Biden is prioritizing foreign policy, which I deeply appreciate.
Yeah, pretty based, okay? And no one can talk shit.
Well, I would say not the Tony Blinken pick might not be based, but the prioritization of foreign policy is based, yes.
So I think one thing that I think you've criticized a lot about like the Trump administration was like abandoning the Kurds, right? And then letting them like be overrun by the Turkish government, right? How do you think the Biden administration will approach Erdogan and the Turkish government?
Much better. Astronomically better. It's not even comparable. And one of the best ways I'll explain how it's not comparable is all I'll need to tell you to look at is Tony Blinken's stance on this, which we've already covered, which his stance on this is that the pullout for northeastern Syria made the situation 10 times worse and we lost leverage, which is good. His Secretary of State thinks it's bad. Joe Biden thought it was bad. Joe Biden was part of Operation Inherent Resolve. He was the vice president to Barack Obama, who did Operation Inherent Resolve, which was the most modern day, most successful American military operations in U.S. history, which we coordinated with the Kurds to push back and defeat ISIS, quote unquote, defeat ISIS. And Biden was part of that.
Yeah.
And he
So
picked, and one of his first picks for Secretary of State was somebody who thinks that it was a disgusting act, which makes me think he's going to stand more in Syria. He's going to try to maneuver his best to get involved with the Kurds and try to give them more leverage. But there's only so much you can repair after all the damage was done. Now, when it comes specifically to Turkey, Biden has been uncharacteristically loud in condemnation of Turkey recently. I remember him releasing a statement condemning Turkish actions in the Mediterranean, which he's using language that's much better than the language that Trump used. He is basically silent on human rights abuses against Kurdish politicians within Turkey. He's been silent on Turkish war crimes or the militias under Turkish supply lines and militias that they supplied northeast Syria that's pulled politicians out of cars and shot them. He laid the groundwork for the Turkish invasion of northeastern Syria, while Biden laid the groundwork for the SDF's success in northeastern Syria. So when you look at these two, Biden knew how to manage a relationship with Turkey, call them out when need be, and leverage his alliances when his allies, like the SDF and Turkey, disagree with each other. They knew how to keep troops
Dylan
on the
for
line to
Kurds
try to keep the
herds.
situation stable. And a limited
Thanks,
amount of
Spectre.
troops, too, 50 to 150.
yeah, good choice.
I think we're going to see the situation when it comes to Turkey. He's going to approach it with much more expertise. He's going to be more openly critical. And when it comes to Syria, we're going to see a hopefully a rededication to our Kurdish, Arab, and Yazidi allies in northeastern Syria.
So this is something that I've kind of realized when it comes to a transition between the Trump and Biden foreign policy. It seems like it's going to be a lot of dedication of fixing, right? Like fixing issues that the Trump administration engaged in. Is there anything that the Biden administration you think is proactive rather than fixing retroactively, right? So like engaging in forms of foreign policy that are new and that'll be quote unquote
I would say the biggest thing for me would be his pick for UN ambassador, which we talked about. Her talking about needing to. Let me see if I can get the exact quote for you. She said it in a very Louisiana way, so it was kind of hard for me as a Marylander to understand. She said she wanted to. What I mean is she used a quote that was like she started talking about jumbo in it, so I was like, she said. It's my way of breaking down barriers, connecting with large people, and starting to see on a human level a big of Langapapia is what we say in Louisiana, which means a little something. I have no clue how to say this.
I don't know what that means either.
I have no clue. I have zero clue. Anyway, what she was talking about basically is the need for. Let me see if I can find the exact section where she talked about it. God, what? Onions, bell pepper, salt. Jesus. Okay, I get it. You're from Louisiana. Where is it? Gosh, man, she really wants everyone to know. Okay, here it is. Okay, so basically, she wants to buff up the State Department. She wants to make sure the State Department's properly funded, the State Department's properly staffed, and this would also, for me, and this is a big thing, making sure that all of her ambassadorships are filled. And I think that her appointment to UN ambassador, her being in the cabinet, her being where she is, with the record she has, is big to me. Combined with how quick Tony Blinken's positioning and appointment was, because that's Joe Biden picking somebody, the first pick, really fast foreign policy pick, Secretary of State, combined with following after somebody who wants to buff up the State Department. This is saying to me that Joe Biden is going to prioritize foreign policy, but specifically that the State Department is hopefully going to get the funding and money and staffing it needs to conduct its job correctly. And a rededication to generally our allies as well. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the thing that is, we're not going to see any big, huge revolutionary new foreign policy moves. What we are going to see, hopefully, is sectors of the State Department that have been underfunded for years are hopefully finally going to get some funding.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. Like finally addressing problems that have been in there for a while. I think something that really that makes me curious is I know the Biden administration and a lot of the Democrats now have been trying to take a more pro-immigrant stance in comparison to the Trump administration, right? When it comes to addressing like places in Central America, right? So addressing some of the issues there. Do you think that the State Department is going to do anything? Or do you think that the State Department is going to address some of the issues that are going on in Central America, either by giving like better funding or engaging in like better policy talks? Do you know if that? Do you think that'll be something that'll happen?
I'm positive. Now, I'm not an expert on Latin American affairs, not in the slightest. Anybody who says that I am is lying. I don't study the two areas I don't know anything about is Latin American affairs and African affairs. Those are two areas, and mostly European affairs too. Um, man, I'm really narrowing down my areas.
Yeah, Dylan, you selling yourself short, man.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Please, like, put me in front of the African Union. Let's see how that goes. But I will say that I doubt that Biden can do any worse than Trump when we have Donald Trump proposed invading Venezuela, a full military invasion of Venezuela. We had Donald Trump who reversed Obama, and I guess this would be one of the more revolutionary things, but it's really just following Obama's footsteps, reopening to Cuba, starting to reopen negotiations, reopen discussions, because this are us trying to put the thumb on the economic lifeline of Cuba has not worked whatsoever, and it's not going to work. We can pray and hope all we want, but we are not going to starve Cuba of the economic resources it needs to survive. It's done it since the 60s. We've tried the Bay of Pigs. We've tried to kill them with cigars. We've tried everything. Eventually, you need to just take a step back, reevaluate the position and say, okay, look, it looks like you guys are existing. In exchange for some human rights reforms here and human rights reforms there, let's open up. That's how I hope he approaches Cuba, and he's already said on the campaign trail that's how he hopes to approach Cuba. Here's another thing that might be quote unquote revolutionary I didn't even think of, and this would show a shift in his previous policy too. It looks like he's going to be part of an administration that ends its support for the Saudi war Yemen.
Based. Hey, that's pretty based.
That would be amazingly based. And the reason why I'm saying this is he himself has already said he wants to. Now, this is a shift because during the Obama administration, they started that support for the war in Yemen. Now, the Obama administration did that under a lot of pretexts of, well, the war is going to be shorter. It's going to be a quick smash of the rebellion. Well, it's Iranian backed, like rebel group. We kind of have to. And they also did it in the context of thinking we just signed the Iran deal and we told the world that we're doing this knowing that more money could be funneled to their proxies. Therefore, we need to counter the proxies. But now the Iran deal has been thrown out, so that part of the pretext for our involvement is also gone. So there's the situation has changed drastically. There's also a lot more dead people, and specifically, I think it was what was it? How many children under the age of 5 have died? Let me look it up.
I know that it's considered
children under the age of 5 Yemen.
In comparison, I think if it was considered a genocide, is it?
Okay. As of 2018, 85,000 children under the age of 5 may have died due to starvation in the war in Yemen.
Just directly,
and
that's absolutely
just starvation, and that's only kids under the age of 5. And of course, the numbers are vary, and some of it is, it's probably not that number. It might be a little higher, might be a little lower, but that's number that's also 2 years old too. So that means more have died, and that's just from starvation. That doesn't include bombs, guns, all the rest of it, disease, all the rest of it. So that's that. And the reason why I think there's going to be a change here is we had the Jamal Khashoggi killing. Yep. The Jamal Khashoggi killing, which Donald Trump in private conversation, it is audio taped if you think I'm lying about this, after Jamal Khashoggi was murdered by the Saudi crown prince, he went and told reporters behind closed doors, I saved his ass. And then continued against the bipartisan, this is one of the main reasons why I think it's going to happen, bipartisan legislation passed the House and Senate during Mitch McConnell's time in office that said, let's end our support for the Saudi war in Yemen after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Trump was the sole individual that stopped it. He vetoed it. And then you have Biden coming in, who has said on the campaign trail that he wants to end our support for it. And Kamala Harris as his VP, who would be a deciding vote in the Senate, who has said she wants to end our support for the Saudi war in Yemen. It is now has the blood. Trump's hands are all over it, which makes it an easier thing for Democrats to kind of do. Say, well, hey, this is Trump's war, not our war, and we're going to end it. Definitely, as Trump has tried to sell him as the anti-war person, ridiculous. We can get into why that's ridiculous in a little bit. And it's also bipartisan to now end the war due to Saudi Arabia's butchering of their image on the global stage and the butchering of the Yemeni people. And that's why I think they are we could have just set the stage for ending our support for the Saudi war in Yemen.
I think that's a really, you mentioned the bipartisanship aspect of it, and I think that's a very interesting way of looking at this. I would say that when it comes to certain foreign policy things, or there are events and actions that can be done that are considered like bipartisan and that are going to be a lot easier to pass in comparison to like other more difficult ones. Do you think, other than ending the war in Yemen, do you think there are some other things that the Biden administration could do that you think would be really important, that would be highly bipartisan?
I would say rededicating our support to the SDF in Syria. Mm-hmm. I would say because that betrayal of the SDF in Syria, what was bipartisanly condemned. It was condemned by Mitch McConnell, it was condemned by Lindsey Graham, it was condemned by Chuck Schumer, condemned by Nancy Pelosi, Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, everybody. Everybody thought it was stupid. Literally, you'd have to go to Rand Paul to find somebody who was giving it a thumbs up. Everybody knew it was stupid. The most diehard. You can go to Dan Crenshaw tomorrow and ask him, and he'll say it probably wasn't a good idea. Maybe not now that enough time has passed, but if you would have asked him then, he would have most certainly said that. And if the paper hit his legislation, I'm sure he would sign to rededicate our support for it. It is bipartisan because it makes strategic sense. It makes humanitarian sense, and it makes sense for the stability of the region. There is no reason to be against it unless you are literally partisan, girl. Unless you are, or you're an Assad simp or Tulsi Gabbard, there's no reason.
Yeah, that's how it does seem to be. So how do you like? So whenever Trump would ever phrase something like this, like pulling out and like leaving the Kurds to be stuck,
he talked a lot about pulling out. Yep. Why didn't he pull out of Stormy Daniels?
That's a good point, Dylan. There's a little Trump running around. Okay, there's another one of those children running around, and guess what? Okay, he ain't talking about pulling out of one of those. That's the real foreign policy. Okay, then. That's where it is.
Did you just say he? I think you should think about what you just said.
What did I just? What did I?
He said he had the little Trump running around, and one of his children. He didn't talk about pulling out of one of those.
That's
pretty
yikes. The partner run is over right now. It was fun while it lasted. Yep. But yeah, we talked about
Epstein moment.
Okay. More importantly, so we kind of talked about like pulling out, right? This is something that I've seen a lot by the Trump administration. Is they're always talking about, we pulled out of here, and we pulled out of Syria, and phrase it as something that's good and effective. How politically effective do you think that is? Talking about pulling out in certain areas and like pulling out, for example, in places like Afghanistan or Iraq. Do you think that was an effective way for the Trump administration to handle things like this?
He is all of these quote unquote pullouts. They're disorganized, they're disastrous, and they just make the situation worse. If you're gonna pull out of a country, you need to do it in a organized manner over a extended period of time that makes sure you will give your allies on the ground a fighting chance. And you can say, look, the best example was Syria, because this is the one area where he really did a pullout, like all the way he executed what his pullout would be. And it was one of the most disastrous foreign policy decisions the United States made while he was in office. I would say it is the most disastrous foreign policy decision he made while he was in office. Politicians got pulled out of cars and shot. Hospitals were bombed. People were killed and their bodies were sold back to their families. I mean, there was over 150 documented war crimes that I could like pull out and show you. Obviously, I can't do that on Twitch due to new Twitch TOS, but obviously it was a disaster. The 12,000 martyrs who gave their lives from the SDF combating ISIS, their life, it was almost as if they died in vain. Not to mention, anti-ISIS operations decreased by over 75% after he pulled out, which meant ISIS had a renewal in northeastern Syria, and they started assassinating tribal elders again and disseminating propaganda. Foreign ISIS fighters escaped from prisons because more guards for these prisons had to be sent to the front to fight the Turkish mercenaries. So instead of guarding these bases, they were out there fighting. And so foreign ISIS fighters, some of the most devout ISIS fighters, escaped. We had more escapes from prisons than ever. It was a disaster. And that was a disaster because we didn't coordinate on the ground with locals. It was a split-second decision. Everybody, there was basically no unity on how this pullout was supposed to occur. We didn't really coordinate it with the other people on the ground and make them aware of it. It was a disaster, and we didn't even wait till it was a stable situation for us to have that pullout, or even try to create that stable situation to pull out. It was a disaster, and if that's the type of pullout Trump wanted to do in Afghanistan or Iraq, then obviously we can see that's a disaster. I want to bring the troops home more than anybody. I really do. But we got to make sure that we don't create the power vacuums that created many of these messes in the first place. Because when we talk about these wars and how they've been disaster for America, the word that always comes up is power vacuum. And it's an important word, that if you destroy a central authority, there will be a vacuum of power, and you need to fill that vacuum of power very quickly, or other people will do it for you, individuals you do not like. And you know what? The same thing applies to withdrawals. That if right now the United States and the SDF were the centralized power in northeastern Syria, if we just get up and move out, then we create a power vacuum. And that tried to get filled, number one, by ISIS escaping and all this other stuff, but that was compounded by the Turkish invasion into northeastern Syria and made it 10 times worse. And so you can see why this discussion of power vacuums when invading countries is discussed at length. But we need to also talk about power vacuums that are created when we leave countries, and how are we going to do it responsibly? Because as the left, we've talked about for years, we need to leave. We need to leave. We need to leave. Well, how do you do it? I mean, if I go to your party and I come over and I do something and I create a mess, I do whatever, and everybody's like, man, Dylan really needs to leave. Dylan needs to get out of here. And you're like, okay, Dylan needs to leave. But then he's like, wait, does he have a car? Are we going to call a taxi? We're going to do that? I can't leave if we don't have any strategy. Or if I do leave, it could just make a bigger mess.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. Dylan Burns at the party.
I tried. Yeah. But then if you kick me out and I don't have a ride home, then I'll make the whole neighborhood a mess.
Just keep throwing up.
I'll start throwing up on everybody's front lawns.
Okay. Oh, dude. Okay. So, you mentioned, like, I think whenever we talk about power vacuums, at least in the American sense, it always goes past people's ears. Okay. I think it's like we need to pull out. Oh, what about the power vacuum? And it's a valid question. But I think to a lot of people, it's become something that's like that just goes directly past them, because it seems like, and I think you've talked about this a couple times as well, it's like foreign policy isn't like a first priority for a lot of people, right? So like thinking about the second order thought about like what happens after we leave isn't something that matters. Is like to a lot of people, it's like, oh, troops home, yeah, let's go. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, this happens both ways. You have some people who are just like, yay, we killed Soleimani, fuck them, right? Or there's some people who are like, screw the Iranians, they're not nice to me, I saw them burn an American flag on TV, send them to hell, right? And then there's other people, it's like, why are we over there? Why are they over there? They're not stopping me from getting groceries, bring the troops home. And I understand these inclinations. They're very like, I understand the inclinations. The thing is, though, these are extremely complicated issues that affect people all over the globe, and we can't just minimize the impact we have. And I think people need to really do consider foreign affairs and our impact on the world when we vote, because when you vote on a president, on this last election, you are not just voting on what affects America. You're voting on what affects the world. You're voting on if choosing for a Yemeni who won that election could decide whether American bombs are going to be supplied to drop on your home. Voting on that election, if you're somebody who cares about the SDF in northeastern Syria depends on if the person who backstabbed you gets another term in office. If you're somebody who cares significantly about stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon that could be possibly used against you one day, or that could cause a nuclear disaster. One person stopped the Iran deal. One person wanted to continue with it. If you're somebody who cares about northeast the South China Sea and all the islands that belong to these sovereign countries, one person started freedom of navigation operations. Another person was giving thumbs up to Chinese concentration camps in Xinjiang in private closed meetings.
I think, and I think I agree with you on this point, right? There's a for a lot of people, and I think that we also heard this comment a lot by like certain people, certain conservatives, talking about why do Europeans, why do people in the Middle East care about the American election, right? Like, why the hell does anyone who's not American care? And you brought it up personally, right? Like, for a lot of people, that can be in places like Syria, that could be installing, like, having another power back.
I got a real easy one here. This is why people should care. American military bases around the world.
True.
Let's. I wonder why people care. I have no clue why people would care.
My understanding is that there's like 2 or 3, American bases outside of America. No biggie, right? No biggie.
I wonder why people care. I have no clue.
Well,
I personally have no idea.
Yeah, pretty. Yeah, like, bro, why do you even care? It's not like there are.
It's not like we're also the largest economy in the world, and if our economy went under, it could trigger a global recession or something.
That's not like that's ever happened either. So that's true. That's true. But I would say, how do we get people to actually start looking at like foreign policy this way, right? I think, and I mentioned this earlier, but like foreign policy for a lot of people is something that's like very separate.
Oh my gosh! I just got a comment from chat. European here. I care because your politics has influence everywhere, which we were talking about.
True.
And people quote Candace Owens in my Slavic country.
Hey. Oh. Okay.
My gosh.
I was gonna make a edgy meme right there, but I'm not gonna do it. But I was. This is something that's always like been interesting to me. Is I think we see this in a lot of forms of politics, but like, how do we get people to realize that this foreign policy, this makes a difference, one, not just to other people, but to them as well? And how do we get people to actually get engaged with this in the actual political process? Is it through better education in schools? Is it on the duty of the media? Is it on the duty of candidates to...
I wrote a paper on this recently on how to get more people involved in foreign policy, and it's kind of... mind if I take a second to see if I can go find that paper?
Sure, yeah.
Wonderful. I had a 4-step plan. A 4-step plan to fix the world.
Oh, nice.
It was for a communications class, and I was supposed to be a persuasive essay, and the essay was why you should get involved in foreign policy.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm pretty bad at writing papers myself, but look at that, okay? That's based.
Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Out of sight, out of mind, and it was mine being like. I thought it was funny.
Okay. Dylan, did you get a B- on this paper?
I got an A+.
Oh, someone in my chat's telling me that you got a B-. Is that are you lying on Twitch?
How would they know?
Yeah, I don't know. 97 cats. Maybe your professor's watching the stream right now.
Maybe. Well, let me tell you the steps. Number 1, establish foreign policy censored news organizations to bring to these issues. Basically, have places online that if they're not completely foreign policy centered, they make sure that foreign policy is part of their news schedule. There is news going on all around the world, and if we're going to create a populace that is part of the most powerful nation on earth, they should need to get information streams going towards them that is informing them about the things going on in the world, so they can pressure their politicians who are involved, who are going to vote on foreign policy activities, and they can inform their actions as part of this most powerful nation in the world, right? So this could not only mean like maybe a news organization that primarily focuses on foreign policy, but news organizations just segmenting more time for foreign affairs issues, talking about what's going on in Ethiopia, talking about the continued developments in the war in Yemen, talking about the war in Syria, talking about protests around the world, whether it be Peru, Argentina, Chile, anywhere. Anyway,
I think do we not, and we already have the capabilities to do this internationally, right? Like I know Al
uh-huh.
Jazeera, I don't know where Al Jazeera is based, I don't remember, but
Al
like
Jazeera is a great example of that,
mhm,
but that's also funded by the government,
yeah.
specifically the government of Qatar. So you can see how maybe something
Yeah.
like that could be a little mad because maybe when you talk about Qatar
Mhm.
issues, they, hmm there's some worse. But I will say that
Mhm.
Al Jazeera has definitely been one of the forces that talk more about foreign policy, specifically in the Middle East, like a lot, and it has been a useful source for me. And Mehdi Hassan has worked for them on many occasions.
Yeah, it's fun to watch him do all those like the interviews, right? I think I
He's
watched you do
great.
the one with the crap with one of the like Israeli former like politicians or like leaders talking about like
Uh-huh.
Palestine. That one was very interesting. That got some eyes on him real quick.
Yep.
Um,
S-
mhm.
So next steps to the plan was lobbying local governments to change K through 12 education standards and trying to create federal standards for K through 12 and international relations education. Basically, making it so K through 12 spends more time teaching youth about the goings on of the world, about foreign policy, and injecting more kind of news and developing stories into around the world into K through 12. Doing this on the local level and federal level, and to try to show the foreign policy apparatus jobs to be more, and this could be part of kind of buffing up the State Department, trying to show those options more often in like career day and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think I was gonna say this, but for your first part, right? We mentioned how Al Jazeera is government funded. Do you know? Do you think that like a network like that could ever exist, independent of any government? Right? Like I would say that it'd be a little bit more difficult because at least in America, they'd have to make some form of profit, and we saw this a little bit. I think it was late '90s, early thousands, with like CNN, NBC, and Fox, when they
Yeah,
did
they
have
would
yeah.
they would have to present it in a way that actually got people to pay
Hmm.
attention, right? They could either make it by making it tear jerking or injecting stories of heroism. I understand the reality of what media is today. I never thought that I could make it so people will actually check in for foreign policy on my show. But I by injecting stuff about and by injecting panel shows, by bringing on guests constantly, by trying to cover it with my tinge of commentary, I've been able to make it somewhat entertaining. So I mean, it's possible. I do think it's possible. I just think they need to put some effort into it. Getting them to put in that effort is going to need just going to be need interest is going to need to be shown.
Yeah, that probably like the like adjusting it that way. And do you like? And I think we mentioned I forget his name. The person like that did that whole like talk and the interviews for Al Jazeera occasionally. Do you think having more content like that, engaging in some form of like, I don't want to say gotcha, right? But I think whenever like you can inherently alter news and alter interviews to make them a lot more entertaining to people, right? And I think we see that a lot. For all he is, like Ben Shapiro kind of does this to a certain extent. Is like having people on or talking to people.
I am scared.
Hmm.
I am scared that the future of media in this country is going to, or at least definitely online media, is going to be tinted by just tons of disinformation. We've seen how it
Hmm.
has been used by foreign apparatuses, foreign states, to try to undercut democracy by spreading disinformation and trying to create unrest within the United States. We've seen them do it. We've seen it happen. There are reports on it. It is undeniable. It is undeniable. If you deny it, you're the conspiracy theorist. Period. End of paragraph. Knowing that and looking at deepfake technology and all these other things and how people edit photos, people think, "Oh, is this photo real?" Oh no, that isn't a real photo. That happens all the time on social media. That is something I'm truly scared of, and I think that it is on these places that host such information to take a more active role in moderating and trying to deal with that and do what Twitter's doing with the disclaimer. I
Hmm.
really like the disclaimer thing that Twitter's doing. I wish that more social media networks would take up those types of those holds on moderation. And thank you so much for the sub. Who am I? I appreciate it.
So that do you think that'd be more difficult when it comes to like engaging with like international news or foreign policy, especially about like violent conflicts, right? Because I think, what was it?
It
I
is.
don't. Mhm.
It is scary because what happens is there'll be something violent and big and explosive that happens, and then there's a million people trying to like take a spin on it to make it look like the other side did this bad thing, the other side on this side did the bad thing, because people like, hey, thank you so much for the tier fives. I mean the tier fives. Whoa, oh
Yo,
man,
Dylan.
who am I? Whoa, thank you so much for the 5 tier 1s. Who am I? I really appreciate that, buddy, old pal. I really do. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, I've just been following. Wow, you've just been following this month too. I appreciate that. Um, so what was I saying? Fuck, I lost it again.
Oh,
But I
you were talking.
appreciate it.
Yeah, so you're talking about
Foreign policy
yeah,
disinformation. Yes.
sure.
Okay. So foreign policy and disinformation. Anytime some big event happens, you'll have people coming out like for the Lebanon bombing.
Hmm.
Oh, that was actually a missile. Oh, it was launched by Israel. Oh, Israel did this. Israel did that. Israel did this. It was. It had nothing to do with Israel. Nothing. You'll still see people saying it was Israel, but you'll see on Twitter accounts, on YouTube accounts, on whatever, people will constantly spread this disinformation, and I think that needs to be like everything else moderated appropriately by these platforms, because if you have people constantly spreading disinformation about war and conflict, you can see why that could be especially dangerous, because this is news about people dying, being killed, war crimes, some disastrous stuff, which can lead to drastic change in policies, but also can lead to violence, because many of these conflicts are ethnic in nature,
Hmm.
and they'll put special tinges to disinformation to make it purposely more hyperbolic, more bad, like Azerbaijani man beats up Armenian girl for speaking separate language, and then you'll look at it and it's actually a footage from 1972 of really blurry, and it's from a totally different case, totally different instance, but then that causes a lynching,
Hmm.
which legitimately happens. You get specifically, there's been a lot of like that type of violence in Ethiopia as of late.
And
Disinformation spread on Facebook, which leads to people getting
yeah,
hurt.
and then another example that would be like Rwanda, right? They use massive forms of like disinformation in order to even like escalate the conflict in and of itself. So this is something that probably needs to be addressed or regulated. But how would you do that on an international level? Would it like mhm.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
Social media is a totally new precedent. It's a totally new thing that has completely set everybody on their ass. If you were a social media, if you were a advertising expert from the
Hmm.
year 2000 and you just woke up out of a coma, basically all your knowledge is worthless. Basically all of it's worthless with the advent of social media and getting people to get eyes on these types of things. So I don't really have an answer for you on that. I'll say that for now, it is up to individual countries to start doing the work and passing legislation to do this, while also making sure to respect freedom of press. Freedom of press is so important to keeping your populace able to report freely, speak freely, and have clear eyes on corruption of the government. So they've got to strike a balance here. And I think it's also important for the individual websites which cross borders
Hmm.
to start moderating themselves. Or it will have to be the government's job to come in and moderate them for them, telling them what to do.
Hmm. I think. Well, I can't say I think, but there was this really interesting phenomena with the Trump administration, right? Where we all heard this like all this fake news stuff, and everyone was like, "Don't take it seriously." And I think it was on your Hippy Dippy podcast. I may have mentioned this, but like I was talking about how, for example, like the Brazilian president right now, his name blanks me, right? We saw this in
Jair
Egypt.
Bolsonaro.
Yeah, and Bolsonaro would still like he keeps on like repeating the same like fake news talking points in places like Egypt. Like a week before Donald Trump came, for I think some form of agreement, they literally passed laws about like what's considered fake news and what's not. And
Oh,
I
relevant
think
millennial. Thank you so much for the tier 1. Continue. Sorry.
yeah, so I think it's really interesting to see how not only the American Like the American presence in other nations can alter whether news is like heavily, I would say, heavily put in as disinformation, but to see the ways that it affects the policy as well, I think that's a positive of the Biden administration. Is I don't think we're gonna see as much of like this fake news, fake press kind of stuff, not only in the U.S. but in like other nations as well, because our view on news has some really really scary effects in other places of the world, and to think that the U.S. was ranked as like now ranks as like one of the top places where you probably wouldn't want to be a news reporter or engage in news is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the rhetoric that has been directed towards the press and in the United States. It is dangerous. It is scary. The type of language that is being used to them. The enemy of the people. They are the enemy of the people. This election has been stolen. They have propped up this. They have propped up that corrupt policy. They propped up this. They propped up that. And then you see people with guns going off to polling stations. You have individuals send pipe bombs to high-ranking Democratic politicians earlier in during this
Mm-hmm.
administration. You have people just doing open threats. We've had media shootings in the last few years. We've had somebody go to a news publication and shoot up the place. Yeah, relevant millennial gifted you that sub, man. But it's scary. It is legitimately scary to see that, and the type of language that's being used around them makes it a lot easier for Trump to just lace in there. Yeah, people who burn flags, they should be thrown in prison. Completely against the First Amendment. We need to loosen up the libel laws. If the sitting U.S. president could just sue news publications for things that they thought were kind of scandalous to his nature, I thought were misrepresentations. Think about how scary that could be when the same president, after a completely democratic election, is running across the country right now yelling election fraud, election fraud, election fraud, election fraud, and suing and doing a bunch of cases that are all getting shot down. If you're just an individual reporter who has a lawsuit from the president of the United States put on your desk saying you said suing you for libel, a lot of people can't deal with that financial burden, will back down, and the story will fade.
And to think that like that could happen, that's already happening in other places around the world where the news is even weaker or doesn't have the same financial funds, in places where the government is just like or like the current regimes there are even worse, is absolutely crazy, right? And that's something about foreign policy that matters a lot. When people who talk about fake news is fake, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like a drone tech literally came on there and started talking about that. That has like legitimate effects, right? That has effects on the news and press of other nations, and their people will engage with this. So you mentioned it perfectly. To have to even think that a president could start like loosening up libel laws and then start suing news companies is absolutely terrible, along with a lot of the social pressure that society right now will be putting on them. It's terrible. It's like that's literally crumbling democracy part.
It is certainly scary to see the press attacked in this manner. I do have problems with how media is done in this country. I have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of problems with how mass media is done, the clickbaity nature of a lot of it, the hardcore partisanship. There's a lot of it I have problems with.
Mm-hmm.
But this enemy of the people narrative is simply being designed just so your people will never trust news sources that say anything bad about your person. Because all they have to do, president kicks puppy, and there's like footage of the president kicking puppy. They see CNN in the corner, don't need to believe it. It didn't
Yeah.
happen. Here is the puppy. There's the bruise. Didn't happen. There's blood on the president's shoe. Nope, didn't happen. All you have to do is see CNN in the corner.
And I'm actually curious to see if any like data or any reports. Like, I wonder if this exact same phenomena when it comes to like you can't trust these specific news sources is happening in other areas of the world. Like, I wonder if this happens in places like I think the major one is like in Egypt and Brazil, and I wonder if they have their own like corresponding news networks that get the exact same treatment. Because if that is, that's like not
Of
just
course, I
happening.
mean, like
Yeah.
this happens all over the world. There'll be
Mm-hmm.
certain news organizations that get spit on by the current administration because they disrespect them, and there'll other be other ones that are praised, like LAN in America for being, yay, you pulled the line, good job, you get the front row seat at the next press conference.
Yeah, it's just absolutely disgusting. And to think that like we have certain people in the country who think this is completely okay, and to think that like this has no real effects and that you can't trust news in general is absolutely scary. The effects of a president on these kinds of things. it's almost like really concerning. And this kind of okay, so this is like a little bit off topic, but how do you react, at least on the podcast, the Hippy Dippy podcast, and people say things like this? I know you say you try to keep it down.
I look. It's difficult at
Mhm.
times to hear somebody say something that's so patently wrong about foreign policy. Sometimes I'll even chip up. Like recently, there was Ender Nax said that Dick Cheney was gonna be in Biden's foreign policy transition team or whatever, and I just had to say that is incorrect, and then I just moved on. Because there's just some of it just hits too
Yeah.
close to home for me to keep my mouth shut. But most of the times I do my best to keep my mouth shut. And it is difficult to hear people rattle off things that I completely disagree with and keep my mouth shut. But it is also a great test of restraint for me. It's a
Mhm.
great test to test my restraint and see how good I am at keeping my mouth shut and just concentrating on process
Mhm.
and making sure everybody has a detailed discussion and leading people towards certain directions, which I think has helped me um, be a better Twitch streamer, but will also help me in my professional life as well, as it'll make me easier to kind of moderate meetings that I take or that I'm on a part in. If I'm on a board, for example, I'm on the environmental board for my city, and I'm sure if I was ever to chair this board, being able to moderate discussions like I am on Hippy Dippy will be extremely useful to me.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. So you kind of mentioned this, right? You were talking about like it's very hard for you to keep your mouth shut on like certain things, and then blatantly have to do that, especially when it comes to foreign policy. That when it comes to like engaging with those things on your podcast, right? Do you ever feel as if do you ever like retroactively feel as if maybe you should say things that you didn't, right? Has it ever like become present to you that like maybe I should have done something here or maybe I shouldn't, or is that something that you kind of like toned down and then realized that that's probably not for the best?
Repeat that question. Like, should I tone down my rhetoric?
Oh, sorry, no. Oh, yeah, I probably should have worded that better. So, do you ever feel as if I? So, what I was trying to say is that you mentioned with the specific example of Ender Nax talking about Dick Cheney, and like you had to call that out. Do you ever feel as if there are certain times on your podcast where you should have said something? Yeah.
This is the main thing I get when
Mm-hmm.
I speak up, thinking afterwards I shouldn't speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I just should stay quiet,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's a moderation issue. That I do definitely have instances where I should have spoke up here. A very famous instance, which has now been lost to the kind of perils of time, was Plethora was on for Hippy Dippy, and that's one that's constantly mentioned. I don't think I didn't. I didn't. There are a few times where I maybe could have stepped up more, but I also just had a totally different moderation style, and I've completely changed my show
Mm-hmm.
since then. But I think most times when I speak up to comment on an issue and give my take, I end up regretting it because I like the image that I've created of while I am left wing, he will give the righties a decent shot at having a discussion here, and that's why I've been able to continue my show up to this point is because right wingers look at it and say, you know what, I disagree with Dylan, but holy shit, I respect the way he moderates. And me, every time I speak up politically on something, I am threatening that image, which is integral for my business model.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of does answer the question. Do you ever feel okay? So when it comes to when it comes to the podcast, do you think you're gonna start doing some more foreign policy stuff on there, or do you kind of like the way that it's going right now?
The thing is, when I do more foreign policy
Mm-hmm.
stuff, it makes it more difficult for me to kind of stay quiet, and
Mm,
it just kind of hurts a little bit, so it's harder. Um, I, I I would like to do more foreign policy stuff, but oh my gosh, it just hurt. And a lot of it is with foreign policy is the people that I have on my show, usually they're not like hardcore experts in and
mm-hmm.
any other topics we talk, but a lot of them, like when it comes to foreign policy, is an area where they're all particularly weak in. So I think it's just better for me to just discuss foreign policy off that
Mm,
show. And I'm always doing foreign policy content
yeah.
anyway, so I would like to like use this time to do stuff that's not foreign policy content.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hey, I don't really have anything else to say. Like, I think we kind of ran through all the basics. Okay, but the real question that everyone wants to ask is, when is the one Dylan Burns versus 7 other people coming back? Okay, when's
Do
that
you
coming
remember? Do
back?
you remember? Do you remember that
I
old?
I watched the video. I watched a little bit of it. Yeah, but
What'd you
when's
think
it?
of it?
Huh?
What'd you think of it?
I thought it was pretty funny. Like it was like the people that I remember that like Doghouse Show was there. I don't think it was really
Doghouse,
good.
Coop, Killer
Yeah.
Steven,
Yeah.
Sledge, everybody, all the old
Yep.
righties.
Yep. So, you
All
think
of them.
you'll ever do something like that ever again? Is that like maybe have some like really heavy hitting people and then like
Uh,
structure it against like
yeah,
7, 8?
I mean, I think it'd be fun to run people through the gauntlet, but it is also by design unfair.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have to be like, you agree that you are going to get 7 people and you're going to get the fuck bully out of you. You're going to need to be able to throw with these people. So it would be something that I could maybe do to myself,
Mm-hmm.
or something I might do to others. But the thing that I find is there's very few people who want to debate me anymore. It's very hard for me to find foreign policy debates. It was hard since the beginning, but now it's even
Mm-hmm.
harder than ever. Like, obviously the tree would be the biggest example. But now it's just more difficult than ever. I've only done like one foreign policy debate in forever, and that was with Kevin Castley. And now he's completely changed his debate policy after debating me. So it's like, I don't know if I'm just like, if I just bring the end to people
Mm-hmm.
talking foreign policy, or the end of people debating foreign policy. But that seems to be the case on Twitter and Twitch. That seems to be the case. So, I would like to do it, and maybe if I made it 7v1, they would feel it was more fair. But
Mm-hmm.
let's say I have the same effect, then no one will ever debate me on foreign policy again if I perform that way on
Wow.
7v1. Who's going to be
True.
like, yeah, I'm going to I want to debate the person who did 7v1 on foreign policy. Yes, I want to take a one-on-one with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be good content for the time that it lasted. Maybe you could hypothetically, you don't do well for one of these, and then you just start baiting people in. Okay, you fail
I'm
one.
not gonna. I gotta purposely. You're suggesting that I purposely
Whoa!
throw debates.
No,
You're
no,
suggesting that I
I'm not
purposely
saying
throw
that.
debates so
Stop.
I can get
No,
more
do not
content.
misrepresent. What all I'm trying to say is that maybe
Uh
one of these debates you're busy
huh.
with
Uh huh.
schoolwork. You don't have the time to prepare.
I'm like
and you can.
smoking a cigar, drunk, high, and like doing homework at the same time of the debate.
Yeah, and let's say that hypothetically happens, only
Uh huh.
hypothetically, and then
Yeah.
everyone's like, ah man, this Dylan kid, he sucks ass, right? Then you
Uh
start
huh.
getting, then hype, all the chuds they start coming, and then you get the 1v7, and it's some good AF content.
Look, I have a good image on foreign policy on Twitch. I would not like to mess with that image by throwing up on stream while talking about the Iraq War to just get people to come in and
Yeah,
debate me.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this is like the supreme debate, bro. Of, you are so sick and tired of talking to yourself, you just need a debate. It's like heroin addict debate style. Like, we're just doing anything to get someone in there to debate you.
Yeah, it's true. It's not for everyone, only for the most dedicated. Okay, but Dylan, if you change your mind, you're busy with school. Okay, you're just busy with class. So
Uh huh.
yeah.
By the way, it feels good to be partnered when Destiny isn't, and to have that up on him always.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah.
Hey, partner now. Okay,
Yeah.
you get anything special yet?
I got a bunch of new emote slots. I got a sponsorship. I got a few things. I'm almost done setting everything up. I'm just trying to add more emotes and everything. I'm trying to get it all settled, because
Oh,
there's just so many emote slots. I have like over 30 now.
jeez, man, that's absolutely. You got any cool emote ideas yet?
I have a drone as one of my emotes. A
Mm.
little something that says war crimes, got little hearts around it. We got Pinkwug, who's an amazing artist on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, and I'm gonna do a shout out for them later. It has made a custom Dylan Burns TV birds, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna get some pixel artists to do some work. We got some chibi emotes coming in.
Mm.
We got a mute the mic emote. For the debates, we got Huey Long. We got a bunch of new emotes, and we're gonna have more coming in later too.
Are you in the partner Discord yet?
Am I in the partner Discord? No, I am not in the partner
Did
Discord.
you
What the
did
hell
you
is
know that
that?
existed?
I did not know that existed.
Basically, apparently, there's this Discord only meant for partners that'll get them in contact with Twitch quicker. He's having a Prime, and he didn't know until another partner told him. Okay, so you're welcome,
Yo.
Dylan. Yeah,
Okay.
hey, saved you right there. So tomorrow you're gaming, right? Shout
Yeah.
your gaming out. What you playing tomorrow?
So tomorrow I will be playing the beta of Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, only your eyes only. Although it's otherwise known as Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh, okay.
And if I hit certain download goals, then I get even more money than I'm already getting, and that means
Hmm.
I can feed myself more amounts of food. So if any of you, and all you need to do to help me out would just play the game for 5 minutes. Download it on your phone. Download it on your computer using the link that I'm gonna post tomorrow. And or actually, if you put !raid in my chat right now, then you can
Wow.
just do it now. Do it now.
Damn.
Hell, you can do it now if you want. But wait till tomorrow to be for
Mhm.
sure, because I don't know if it's recording it yet. But still, it's !raid.
Do you have any other game ideas other than playing the amazing? How
Raid.
many
Look,
champions are
Raid
there?
Shadow Legends saved my marriage.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
How with all those champions, right? How
yeah,
many? 108
yeah,
champions or something?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had them all sit down and debate my wife on why
Oh,
she should stay with
she
me.
she shouldn't leave you. Oh
Yeah,
wow, yeah. They ripped up the divorce papers right out of her
yeah,
hands. Yeah, so
yeah.
pretty cool, pretty cool.
Yeah, and then yeah, it was great. You know how Trump was like, they injected bleach
Uh-huh.
into your arm to stop from COVID?
Yeah.
He was wrong. Just inject Raid Shadow Legends into your arm and no COVID.
Wow, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, there is no vaccine. It's just Raid Shadow Legends.
this is
So,
Raid Shadow
yeah,
Legends. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You play any? So, you have any other games coming up? Or are you gonna be exclusively playing
Yeah,
the best game
I'm
ever?
gonna I'm not gonna exclusively play Raid Shadow Legends for 2 hours. I'm also gonna be playing Soma. I want to play Bully,
Mhm.
the old Rockstar hit.
Mhm.
And I might play Call of Duty Cold War because
Ooh.
it's got some foreign policy tones to it. I
Yeah,
heard Ronald Reagan makes a guest appearance.
you could debate Ronald Reagan live, dude.
I can debate Ronald Reagan live. Yeah,
Yeah, pretty base, pretty base. Well,
that'd be pretty
Dylan,
big.
I appreciate you for coming on for my my partner run. Hey, okay, congrats on becoming a partner. We all know it was a
Oh,
lot of hard work, and you finally got it. Okay,
look,
so.
there's two people in wrestling.
Mhm.
They'd say there's two mountains in wrestling. On
Mm.
one is the Undertaker,
Mm.
where he's at the top of it, and everybody's trying to climb the mountain, and he's dropping down ropes, saying, "Come up here. The weather's fine. Let's all make a lot of money." And on the other mountain, there's everybody else who has boulders, and they're throwing it down, saying, "Get the fuck off my mountain. I'm making the money." And you know what, Polar?
Mhm.
I seem to have missed the boulder that I threw at you, so I might as well
Yeah.
help you up.
You're not gonna help me up, or you are gonna help me if I didn't hear that last part.
Maybe if you join my stream team, I'll help you up.
Oh, a stream team? What's that
Yeah.
about?
What's a
What's
stream team?
yeah? What's a stream team?
Maybe you have to tune in next time to hear more
Oh,
about the stream team.
wow. Okay, I'll definitely stay tuned in for a potential stream team. Uh, Dylan will explain it. Yep.
Yep. I'm still working on some stuff, but yeah, I am planning on doing a stream team where I'm gonna try to help some other streamers who are not yet partners try to like build up their content, do stuff like that. So maybe they one day can become partners.
Wow. Thank you, Dylan. If I receive an invite, I will definitely join the stream team if
Wow.
possible. Yeah. So, hey, Dylan, I really do appreciate you for talking today. Hope your stream goes well, and it's good to hear that Raid Shadow Legends saved your marriage. Okay.
Save my marriage? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. We will have many, many more children to come because Raid Shadow Legends fixed my erectile dysfunction. Anyway,
Oh,
you have a blessed day, man.
you too. Bye.